project has been accomplished. This is a badass Kona Explosif. This little dude will feel amazing on the bike parts, some cities, some why not commuting. This bike you can take it for MTB marathons. In the front we've got super awesome Carbon Cycles Exotic rigid fork. In the rear matching seat post from Exotic where carbon alloy and titanium meet. Sweet thing. The sole of the bike, it is steel chromoly frame from Reynolds. The drivetrain is the GX Eagle, amazing drivetrain for the money. The wheels are built of DD Swiss rims, Novatec beautiful white hubs made by fitwheels.eu. Short stem from KCNC with the cap and the bolt matching the frame. Super nice handlebars from KCNC and the grips from KCNC with the color matching beautiful nipples on the wheels and the front wheel quick release. And of course 650B wheels on Schwalbe No-Bionic aggressive tires. But you are certainly most interested in how to build the bike. Let's do it. Hi there, Danny here. I want to see this bike riding, so let's go ahead and build it step by step. The bottom bracket, making sure that the bottom bracket area here inside and outside is 100% clean. I'm putting just a little bit of grease on the threads. Now note the tightening direction and the side on which this cup, this bearing should be used. This is the drive side, so the right side of the bike when we sit on the bike. Well, it is all going pretty easy. If you need some further assistance, I have the full video on that. But so far, this is the center lock rotor. Just make sure you don't put it the other way around. So all the signs should be visible from outside, like the diameter and the model and so. And we use the same exact tool for this lock ring on the rotor as we were using for the cassette. Now my beautiful through axle. If this was a carbon frame, I would not use any grease at all. You don't want to put the grease on the carbon. Make sure the seat post clamp will go all the way through. I'm removing the grease because I don't want to have any grease on my seat post or inside the seat tube. As I said, I'm not putting any grease on any type of the seat post, steel, alloy, carbon. On some carbon seat posts though, I would put some carbon paste, so the assembly paste, so that the seat post will not just slide down, but it shouldn't be the problem here with the steel frame. Also the fit between the seat tube and the seat post here is very tight. Now just a little bit of grease so that the headset assembly process will be easier, and also the grease will make the whole system a bit more waterproof. And here I put always quite a lot of the grease, because this is all for this gap between the frame and this lower bearing to be sealed and waterproof. I just secured the stem so that the fork will not fall down. Everything is just assembled as it would be during the ride, and now we're gonna measure the steering tube. And that's the moment when we need to decide whether we're going to use some spacers or not. So these spacers will go under the stem, but I'm just, measuring the distance right now. So I'm gonna give the owner of the bike opportunity to either cut the steering tube even more or just leave it like that. So I'm using these 1, 2, 3 spacers, and I'm gonna mark it here on the steering tube. This line marks the top of my stem. In order to tightly secure the headset, I need to have my steering tube a little bit shorter, about 3 millimeters. So I'm gonna make another line just below it. In order to draw the line evenly around the steering tube, you can simply use the edge of your stem for that job, but I'm gonna use a special tool. Don't push it here. Beautifully done. This is a masterpiece. Well done job. We need to have the upper edge of the steering tube maybe 2.5 millimeters below the edge or the upper surface of the stem, because now we are assembling the last part of our headset. This is the star nut, this is the bolt, assembling bolt, and this is the cap here. So the cap will lie down on the surface of the stem. This nut will be, this is the anchor. It will be anchored here inside the steering tube, and then this bolt will pull the star nut up, compressing all the bearings, so the upper bearing and the bottom bearing. That makes our steering system work. If this was a carbon steering tube, we wouldn't use this kind of star nut, we would use some other kind of anchor, but in this case, alloy, we are using the star nut. The next step is removing the front wheel, because the tire is just too soft and it won't give us a nice working platform. And now make sure you do not damage your dropouts. That means using the original protection for the forks. If you bought a new fork, it certainly came with one. If you bought a bike, it was a shipment and the bike had the front wheel removed, it should come with such a plastic protection. If you don't have it, just use like 4-5 layers or of a nice rag or something, so that you do not damage the dropouts. Especially if these are carbon, make sure you have some protection underneath. This is how the protection looks like. My fork is ready for the job now. Now I'm going to remove the stem. It's time to do it. This is the star nut. It's gonna be maybe like 5 millimeters deep into the steering tube. So it goes inside. Then we're gonna have this mounting bolt and the cap, and mounting bolt goes like this. We need the star nut inside the steering tube because there is no thread for the bolt to mount the whole system. Now, how do we assemble it, install it? In order to install the star nut, it's great to use the tool which is designed for it. The tool will allow us to thread the star nut here and then go right there down the steering tube, straight and nice. But if you do this job once a year, the tool can be as expensive as as your headset, so you can use the home method, which is just the mounting bolt. Now, you need to be aware that if you hit really hard, you will be able probably to damage the threads. It never happened to me, and it is the first time I'm gonna use the tool, actually. You can use the mallet. It cannot be like a steel hammer. You don't want to be hammering it down. You do not need a lot of force in order to install this star nut, so don't worry about this. This is probably not the method that manufacturers will recommend for their star nuts and the headsets, but you can do it like that. Just make sure the star nut goes straight, looking at the leaves of the star nut. You have one row here and then the other one here, so make sure it doesn't go like this. It has to be straight, otherwise you're not going to be able to thread the bolt. Okay, I'm gonna use the original stuff. Hammer time. Let's check it. Cool! This is great. The star nut is on its place. We can assemble all the headset. Now, what force to use in order to assemble this bolt? Make sure you have these two still loosened up, so no tension on these two bolts. The stem is just loose. And now you can feel some play on the edge between the headset, the head tube, and the upper bearing, or the head tube and the bottom bearing. There is some play, so I'm gonna fix it like that. Still a little bit. This is great. Once we don't have the play, check out the handlebar. It should work very light. Now I'm gonna check the front wheel. It should be aligned with the line of the frame and the stem, and then I can tighten these two bolts. It's time for the handlebars. Let's not scratch anything. Look at these lines here. In order to get the handlebars centrally located, so same distance between the edge of these on the right side and on the left side. Now it's too far, now it's in the middle. The rear brake, longer housing. The front brake, shorter housing. Torx T25. The front brake, it's time to plan how I'm gonna route the housing. It's pretty easy. And then mount the caliper. This is the post mount system, so everything fits nicely here. But since I'm gonna use the 180mm rotor in the front, I need to use the adapter for that. So adapter post mount 180mm. Now I'm gonna measure, cut and install the housing, shifting housing, and then the shifting cable. Our Kona Explosif has already the disc brakes, but the hose of the rear one is too long and we need to shorten it. After assembling the brake lever on the handlebars, I'm gonna find out the best way to route the housing to the rear caliper brake. It can either go on the main tube or on the upper tube, but it seems like the main tube routing has been made for the dropper post and the upper tube for my braking hose. Here in the rear I'm going to mount the IS to post mount adapter. This is the caliper of the rear brake. First off, I'm gonna make sure that my pistons are far away from each other. That means we have as large as possible distance between these two braking pads. You can use this original transportation protection for that matter. You can also use the specifically designed for that job tool. You can also try with a screwdriver, but make sure you do not damage your braking pads. Make sure that you route the cable on the right side, on the proper side of your frame. In this case, it will go here on the inside, and that would be the most of the cases, I think. It would be good idea to have Loctite on these. I'm pulling the braking lever so that caliper will be aligned against the router. Now I'm gonna thread these bolts in. And now we'll see how the wheel spins. Perfect, no rubbing. Now I'm going to route the hose and to clip those little clips and assemble the hose, and then we're going to cut the excess of it. Two important info at this moment. The carbon seat post cannot be squeezed with a lot of force, so I've never damaged any carbon seat post. There is just a little bit of the torque of the seat post. I have a good grip between the bike stand and my seat post, but now I'm gonna raise the front end of the bike because we're gonna cut the hose and I don't want to bleed the brake after this operation, so my lever has to be much higher than the caliper of the brake, and so there will be more forces working on my seat post. That's why I'm gonna put the bike on the top tube. In this case also we have to be careful because there is one cable to the derailleur and the other is the hose to our rear brake, so be careful with this and do not squeeze carbon too much. Don't worry, the operation is not that difficult. The first step is to point the levers upwards so that we won't spill any oil. Here are the things I wanna have just at hand right now. The insert of our hose to our hose, because we're gonna cut that one off and throw it away, and the olive because we can only use it one time. We do not reuse the olive. The tools I'm gonna use is the housing cutter, the mallet for putting the insert into the housing. Some pliers might be helpful, and the 8mm key to remove the housing from the brake. Let's remove the sleeve. And I almost forgot some type of a tape, like electrical tape or this type of tape for mounting the housing to the handlebars while we'll be operating with some other stuff so that we don't lose any oil. I have already a piece of tape prepared on my housing. It's time for the first cut. This is the cut number 1, about 10 centimeters from the brake itself. Of course, if you're gonna shorten the hose at least by those 10 centimeters, it will be much more in my case. So I'm gonna cut here. Be careful not to lose any oil. With my housing pointing upwards and taped to the handlebars, I can now remove this part. I'm using the 8mm ski in order to unthread the sleeve nut. The only part we're going to reuse is the sleeve nut, the olive, the insert, and this housing will need to be recycled. And now I think this could be the right shape. I'm looking for the similar shape as my shifting cable here. I'm gonna cut it right here. I'm just reshaping the housing after the cut very, very gently. And now it's time for the insert. Make sure the insert is all the way into the housing. It's good to use special tool for that. You can do it if you have a good grip just with your hands, but make sure you don't break your hose. Now we are putting all the parts in the right order and direction. So first the sleeve. I haven't been even removing this one. Then the sleeve nut. It has to point with the thread towards the end of the hose, and then the olive. Let's thread this one in. The torque is about 4 Newton meters. You want to have the whole thread to go into the body of the brake. Just feel how it goes, slowly thread it in. Let's see whether it works and no oil comes out. The brake goes back into its position. Now I want to route these or mount these housings nicely. Their length is just right. But before I use any zip ties, I'm gonna set the levers, braking levers position and my shifty position. To be sure it is all symmetrical, I want to have that in mind. I'm just measuring the distance from the stem to the clamp of my brake, and this is 16 centimeters. I did it just perfectly without the measuring tape. Perfect.
Guys, thanks for hanging out with me. Remember to join our forum.sickbiker.com where we discuss all the topics, training, service, any issues with the bikes. If you want to share anything with us, join our Facebook group. All the links are below. And if you want to join my patrons, feel free to do so. And now, okay, you might watch just 1 or 2 episodes more, but then let's go and ride.